Hello, we must all have been hearing about the wrestlers, Indian wrestlers, federations, girls, accusations about abuse. So today video we are going to cover about what is the psychology of those rape victims and how it impacts their thought process on their own self, on the way they look at the society, and what is their major idea of justice in the whole process. So before we begin that, we will take the help of one of the famous psychologists of Harvard Medical School. Her name is Judith Herman. And why we are taking her help in order to put forward what is the psychology of rape victims. Recently she has come out with one of the new book called Truth and Repair. She had published a book 30 years back in 1992, Recovery, wherein she had proposed 3 stages of recovery to the traumatic patients. So she was the first lady who has come out with a concept of something called CPTSD. Now CPTSD is literally, it means complex post-traumatic stress syndrome. So whenever we are in a trauma, means only that you have some kind of affiliation towards feeling powerless, wherein the victim is rendered helpless by the overwhelming force. So again, the trauma can be in 2 types of categories. One which is one of incident, which she defines as type 1, and it can be repetitive in nature, which she says as type 2, wherein the complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which includes the syndrome that follows upon prolonged and repeated trauma. In her book in 1992, which she had published, she proposed the 3 recovery process for a traumatic patient, wherein she said, before anything else, trauma survivors must get a basic sense of safety. That was her first step. The second step was only after that they can mourn what they have gone through or what they have lost. That was the second step. The third step was resume some version of ordinary life. She has categorized 3 steps for a patient. For patients who have undergone some traumatic experience, be it mostly it was people involved in the sexual trafficking case or drug abuse or maybe sexual abuse while in childhood or something of that sort. It goes on to highlight that there is a 4th stage of recovery also, and that 4th stage tries to explore what is wrong at the broader level. Obviously, if you want to have a calming effect on the victim, you need to give him the human touch, and that touch not only has to be from her own experiences of coming out, but also from the immediate family ones and the society at large. So she cites a case of 16-year-old Alisa Ackerman, who was attacked by a boy at a beach party. She had told him she didn't want to be with him. She had told him she liked girls, but he called her disgusting and forced himself upon her. Her life fell apart. Ackerman's grades plummeted. She couldn't perform athletically and she flunked out of the school. It took years until someone she met whose support allowed her to recoup and build up. Ackerman went on to become a criminologist. Truth and Repair, the author Herman asked Ackerman what she wanted from the man who raped her. For herself, Ackerman wanted acknowledgement, explanation, and reparations. And lastly, if possible, compensation for every dollar she had spent on her own mental health after the attack. Ackerman wanted the rapist to be accountable to the larger community, owning what he had done. She also wanted accountability from bystanders too, the people who should have helped but didn't help. The community that failed her when she was raped and after she was raped wanted acknowledgement, apology, and amends. Over the course of this book, she interviews survivors of trauma are not given justice by the system, then they are let down not only by the justice system but by the communities also. So she has interviewed 30 total survivors, out of which 26 are female, 4 are male survivors. Here the sense that their own communities have failed them. That's one major breach of trust for victims, that the communities, the people surrounding them, the society on which she was brought up, they failed them as individuals. In the book, she is persistently listening to the victims, asking survivors of crime what would make things right for them, or as right as possible is a very difficult question to answer. So it looks very simple, but there are complex things which goes around the mind. So she, a writer who was sexually abused by her paternal grandfather, feels resentment, first of all, towards her own mother, who didn't believe her at the first, and urged her never to tell her grandmother on the ground that the truth would kill her. Fraser was raped at knife point by her ex-boyfriend and is appalled when his own parents start launching a letter writing campaign on his behalf. A male poet was molested by her older brother, and there's the idea that he would even discuss this. I saw a unique case of someone named Jones, a Chicago artist and community activist. She was assaulted by a fellow activist. Describes herself as a prison abolitionist. She couldn't. A mess is not adversarial, which is like a contest between the victim and the abuser. The victim in the truth appear are perhaps less vengeful than the proponents of retributive justice system. They are also less conciliatory than the advocates of restorative justice system. So it's something which is dwindling between punishing and getting the justice, or just forgiving and feeling that the justice is like done. So that's where the mind is like. So what the victims actually want, they want a true pertinence, the true apology, the idea of remorse from the people who actually did the crime. In the book Truth and Repair, she is under the dilemma about the victim who is like a police abolitionist. She doesn't go to the police and complains, and yet she wants the society to stand for her. So that's a paradox, that's a dilemma. Herman says that therapist's role is to affirm a position of solidarity with the victim. Herman explains the community's primary obligation to victims comes down to repairing the harm that had been done to them. Like most of Herman's subjects, Jones also pointed out to the community, as I said, but where she says that society values a black man over a black woman. Jones was agonized over the outcome, but she refrained from reporting the man to the police. So the fourth stage of recovery, which she discusses in this book of Trauma and Repair, she says it is a social one. The healing requires empowerment and engagement, the opposite of shame and silence. That's what is her proposition in the book. Recovery cannot be simply a private, individualistic matter, but recovery is complicated. And hence, even the best version of our current system of justice is often less than healing for the survivors of traumatic experience or attacks like rape. In fact, survivors are less focused on the punishment than the justice system would suggest. And they want trauma-informed training for participants, such as law enforcement, to create compassion. All they want is a system of authentic engagement with their attackers. So what is the summary of Truth and Repair, what the actual victims want? Survivors who spoke to Herman were conflicted. He assumed that it wasn't possible to secure a sincere statement of deep remorse. They thought the attacker should be exposed to public censure, and for those in the workplace or religious institutions to be removed from positions of power. Some survivors also proposed making rapists responsible for the often ruinous cost of seeking justice, as well as the personal repair, rehabilitation for offenders to prevent them from causing harm to others in the future. So she points out to the collective responsibility of the society about the actual justice to the victims. So if we look at the whole proposition, the interactions with 30 survivors and the overall judgment and their opinion, it seems that the survivors are not too much interested, or like not as much as interested our system is, as our society is, in punishing the victim, but they want a different approach to ensure that there is a lot of active engagement, a lot of active acceptance and changes done to ensure that this doesn't get repeated in the future. Hope this video has been useful to you and makes a sense to what is happening in the Indian context of those wrestlers fighting out for their own justice not because they feel that the perpetrator not only needs to be penalized, not only needs to be given the right treatment by the law, but more awareness about how the safety of women is important if we want more Olympians to win medals for us as a society, as a country. Thank you. Thanks for your time and patience.